Hey there. This episode concludes our week on body language. If you haven't heard some of the previous guests, I highly encourage you to check them out. These include Mark Bowden along with his co-author and partner, Tracy Thompson. That was actually Mark Bowden's second appearance. I have also had on folks like Chase Hughes, who wrote the Ellipsis Manual and discusses behavioral engineering, along with Chris Voss, former FBI hostage negotiator and author of Never Split the Difference. Today we have Scott Rouse, another amazing body language expert. He has been on multiple television networks giving feedback on body language and is a true master. Be sure to listen through as Scott is giving unstructured listeners an incredible deal on a master body language course. Look, I'm not exaggerating. This deal's fantastic. Lastly, if you haven't already subscribed, I hope that you consider doing it as I have some other amazing guests coming down the line. Thanks for tuning in, and I give you Scott Rouse.
This is Unstructured.
Today we're joined by Scott Rouse. Scott Rouse is a body language expert. He's from scottrouse.com. You can find him on YouTube. His channel's starting to climb. Now, Scott is quietly one of those guys who's out there doing it all the time, doing keynotes and stuff, but I hadn't heard him. He's flying a little bit under the radar. I think too busy actually packing the courtrooms and actually applying the craft to the field. Big honor to have him on. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great. How you holding up?
I'm doing fine. Now, we have some of the same friends, so I'm going to be dropping names left and right. We'll probably talk about them, and hopefully others will check out the shows. I've had Mark Bowden on, and Mark Bowden will also be on again, and Chase Hughes.
Yeah.
Now, earlier, I sent you something from Chase Hughes, who's a former guest, and it's the behavioral table of elements.
Right.
And I thought that might be kind of a good launching point to see what you think of the veracity of the principle that when reading in body language, you're not looking for one single thing. You're looking for clusters of behavior, and you can add those together.
Right. Well, looking at that, there's a thing. If there's an interrogation technique called the read technique, and most everybody that I know that's in interrogation that's on here now, they'll all know what I'm talking about. And in part of the read technique that was developed, I believe, in the 70s. And it's a technique in interrogation. There's different kinds of techniques. This is just one of them. But there's also a chart with the read technique, a small chart that has little things that are similar to that. Not as widespread and as microscoped as Chase's are. Because I looked at that, I was like, holy smokes, man. It's like, how could you remember all that stuff? And you start looking and you go, well, I know that. But he's taken all those little parts and just broken them all down and said, well, here it is. And it was fascinating seeing all that stuff, but I'm thinking, holy smokes, where's this guy get the time to do all that? I mean, I thought I was a nerd when it comes to this, That's what I was saying earlier. That guy, if I ever meet him, he'll like me at first for like the first 11 or 12 minutes, but getting about an hour and a half, you go, gee, we're going to, get this guy away from me. Because, obviously he's into the minutia of all that, and I am too. So he'll like me at first, but I think he'll hate my guts and hate seeing me coming because I'll have so many questions I want to talk about it, make sure I've got the same amount he's got.
I think actually you guys would get along. One thing that he does, and I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that too, is he makes sure to videotape everything. And then at his leisure, he plays back the video in slow-mo and everything else without sound, with sound. Then he can take a look at the minutia because he's looking. Okay, what just happened there? Oh, well, there's a little this and a little that because it's paused. And so he has plenty of time to leisurely break down every element of it.
Yeah, that's as nerd and cornball as it sounds, that's one of my favorite things in the world to do, especially if I'm doing an interrogation and I get the video. If you do, I'll do a lot of financial thing, for financial companies, banks.
Embezzling and stuff.
Yeah, man, it's my favorite. And being able to take those back and look at them, breaking down and watch them later on and go, yeah, I was right about this. I was right about that. Because all these things pass by. And if you blink or you're looking down, look at a note for a question or you're writing something down or anything else, you'll miss a lot of things. So being able to watch those videos later is just, I love it. And it's hard to find somebody to nerd out with on all that stuff. And Greg, he tolerates that, I think, with me, but that's about it. It's like, dude, let's get into the.
Well, it's fascinating though, because it's like, that's important too. I've also had Chris Voss on, and he's a negotiator. And I think there's some similarity or crossover with you guys.
Yeah.
And he has to be in the moment. He can't say, oh, wait, let me play back the video for our negotiation now.
Or he's most likely on the phone with him. So that's the thing about those situations. That guy, that's a great book. And what a great personality too, to fit that, man. Perfect. I've watched like a lot of interviews with him, and what a great guy. He sounds like, but I'm sure he's one of those guys, you meet him and everybody feels the same about him. Dude, he's a cool guy. I like that guy. So that'd be one of those, and you may not know what he really thinks about you.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I'm not saying he would try to hide it, but I'm just saying I think after you hung out for a while, you probably get a vibe where he did not. But I think you'd get the vibe he liked you regardless.
Oh, but he's a curious guy. And I think that you have that same vibe. Chase has the same vibe. Greg has the same vibe. And especially Mark Bowden has that same vibe.
What a sweetheart, man. I love that guy.
But
I love Mark Bowden. Oh, yeah.
And that just makes you feel so good.
Yeah.
He's busy asking about you, and he's genuinely curious about you. And
but
what are you doing?
He's collecting information though too, just so you know.
Of course he is. Yeah. Of course he is.
So God, he's a great guy. I like him a lot.
Actually, that brings me to another question. Since you are constantly either watching people or interrogating them directly, have you found that the type A, shall we say, cocksure personality is some of the easiest to read versus the uncertain personality?
I love both of them. I really do. And no matter what type I'm talking to or dealing with, it's just like Christmas. Every time I go into it, it's like, oh, here we go. Those seem to be the easiest because the danger of that, not physical danger, but the problem with making sure you don't make any mistakes is once you get used to that personality type, you keep seeing it, you say, I know exactly what this kind of guy is going to do. I know what he's going to do. And everybody's different. And once you start going down that road, I got this. I know what he is. He's a this, or he's a that, he's a that. And I know what's going to happen. After a while, you get used to it. And it's normal to get used to that. That's when you'll start making mistakes, and you'll make decisions that don't go with what's actually going on, because you'll be so comfortable. You'll get all cocky. You'll go in, hey man, I got this. That's the excitement I like, is not knowing when you go in and you see the type of personality it is, and then start looking for on one side, you're looking for the differences of all the other ones you've talked to like that. While at the same time, you're looking for the things that are the same as you ask questions and you observe what their behavior is doing.
How do you inoculate yourself against the cognitive bias, or, as you put it, being caught into a pattern? Because I imagine when you go in, you've been primed with a lot of information.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you may be halfway to a judgment or a verdict before you even see them. How do you inoculate yourself against that to say, okay, clean slate?
Yeah, that's tough to do. That's really hard, because sometimes you hear people coming in, depending on where you are. Did this guy? What an asshole! This guy. He's always been this way. He's stealing this, or he's done this. You get all this information that builds up and goes, oh, he must have done it. But I mean, there are other times when I'll go in and people just be sure this is the person, and it's not the person at all. So to inoculate yourself, in my case anyway, I just keep looking at it as I'm collecting that information for the first time as I'm going through it with them. I've got tons of information that I'm sure is being sifted through and all that. But as I'm watching that person and talking to them, I'm not assuming already they've done anything. I keep making sure. You can't see, there are what I call absolutists that will say, oh, he scratched his nose, and that means he's lying. This means that. Those things don't mean squat by themselves. But once you start collecting those things and saying, okay, and then you ask a question and you see a specific or a certain reaction, and then a couple minutes later you'll ask the same question again in another way and see if you get the same type of reaction, because their brains.
Is this the rule of three that you've talked about?
Yeah, that's what I go by as the rule of three. Is that you see three things. Some people will say, don't do groups, and if it's just three. But once I start seeing three, that's when I start saying, okay, well, this looks like they're headed down the road of being honest with me or being deceptive about something. I like to see, although people will feel nervous and start shaking their leg, or they'll start using the small adapters, and you can look at that and go, oh, okay, I get that. But I always want to make sure, and then I'm looking for one or two other ones at the same time. I don't want to go off just the one thing, because I don't think that's potent enough as an answer for you, seeing the one thing and then say, oh, I know what that means, and moving on. You just got to keep saying, okay, I always go in with, okay, they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The person's innocent. And I'm just making sure they didn't do it. That's one that in some cases. Other cases, you got to go in and you can just see it on them. When you first go in, you go, oh gosh, this is, I'll be out of here in 30, 45 minutes, an hour.
Do you need to establish a real baseline with them though ahead of time
to
make sure that, the person just doesn't have that tick or whatever. That may go on. Yeah, that's the most important part. I mean, when you talk to Greg, he's the master of that. And getting a baseline on someone's behavior, I do it by asking questions. And I have a list of questions that I already know the answers to. So where are you from? How long you been married? All these kind of things. But I don't ask one after the other. I act like I'm waiting on someone or waiting for something to happen. And I have somebody come in and hand me something. So the waiting I've been doing looks valid. Or I'll get up and leave. So I ask them questions for 10, 15, 20 minutes and just see what they look like. Wait till they get a little bit bored, depending on what kind of person they are. If I'm already aware they're, let's say, just to make a long story short, let's say we know they're a touch narcissistic, or they're going to be, they like to be in charge and all that. There are a couple of tactics and things you can do to make them think that they're in charge. So you look like the lower man on that totem pole. You'll be more submissive toward them. I know. Oh, yeah. Chase will walk in with his shirt kind of untucked and sloppy and pretend somebody's yelling at him.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, okay, so you watch too much Columbo, eh?
Oh, yeah. And he said that's the thing about him. This is another reason he'll hate me. He said he's got the box set of if I wish I could spin this around, you could see it. I've got the same box set. I love Columbo.
I love it.
When it comes on, I watch it. And my take on Columbo was this. Every time I saw him, I'm under the impression, or I like to think that when he comes in, he knows the guy or the girl did as soon as he talks to him, because he gets that look on his face. And then he just works his way back from there. He knows who it is. That's my thing. Not like he has ESP or something, but it's one of those. And if you really get into it, you can see where different directors who are huge directors now directed different episodes of that. Mm-hmm. Who's the guy that did E.T. and all that?
Spielberg.
He directed a couple of them. And when you can see it on those things, you say, holy, why is this different than all the other ones? and you can spot it on him. I think it's the one where David Cassidy's father, Jack Cassidy, was the author and ended up killing his partner. I think that's the one that he did.
Well, Spielberg worked for Corman. I mean, everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah. But that was a great show. It really was. I mean, I remember when I was little, my parents watching it and stuff when I was little, and just a great show. Anyway,
and you would agree that Bull is carrying the torch, right?
See, the thing about Bull, that's one of those. I don't know if it's anything. It's for me. It doesn't hold up on the validity of the information they're using for body language and that behavior. I shouldn't.
Oh, so you mean you don't have a mirrored jury inside of a room that'll lie up automatically as if they're connected psychically with the real jury?
Not as often as I'd like to, but there's that. But I mean, the parts where they talk about where he shoots out these little bits of him, behavior is this, and then he says something about behavior, and it's like, geez, dude, that's not right at all. It's like the 738-55 rule. I think he says that communication is 7% words. And
I was going to go there too. I know you love that.
Oh God, that's the one I just hate the most. When I hear that come out of somebody's mouth, I want to go, dude, I talked to Marabian, and he told me that himself to tell you when it came up. Anybody that comes up to say, no, this didn't happen.
So let's break that down, because that is really commonly used and said.
Oh yeah.
So what is the rule?
It's the 738-55 rule of communication. And that's the one you hear these quote unquote body language experts when they've been Googling and decide, I want to be a body language expert. And they go out and start teaching people and telling people about the 738-55 rule. And it doesn't mean they're lying. It just means they're not up to date. Since 1967, they haven't brought their information up to date. So a little bit behind. Communication is 7% words, the words you use, 38% the tone of voice, and 55% body language. And my go-to on that is always, well, then let's play little charades here and see how, without using any words at all, see how good you can communicate with me. And it just shows you how important speaking is and talking is. Body language is one thing, but it's you've got body language, and you've got nonverbals, but people make sounds as well without talking, without using words as they're speaking. For example, they'll say, I was watching a guy. yesterday watching a deposition, because I do depositions as well for attorneys. And the guy would speak and he'd go, and make these little, and when they did so-and-so, and then these little, pushing noises. And so I finally figured out when he was doing these, as a lot of people do, he's just recalling information where it's supposed to be. He was asked a question that was supposed to be new to him. It was something he's rehearsed. So he's thinking about the answer that's given him, in this case, not in every case, but in this one case, that was giving him the time to recall that story and run it through again, because he hasn't, people will deliver stories when they've rehearsed them. They'll deliver a story. If they've rehearsed it out loud, it sounds different than when they've rehearsed it in their head.
Gotcha.
For example, if you ask someone, "What did you do this, or did you do this? Did you, light the car on fire that caught the house on fire that burned the house down?" And they'll say, "No, I did not." And the thing is, when they say, "No, I did not," you go, "Who talks like that?" You want to go to Arby's? "No, I do not." Nobody talks that way.
No contractions. Okay.
Yeah. So they say the full words, and it's like, geez, dude. And I've been in getting ready to go in to talk to someone, to interview someone, and watching them on the monitor, and they're going, "No, I did not. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. No, I did not.
Oh,
I
God.
am not." Oh, yeah. And they don't realize they a lot of times don't realize they're doing it, but that's how they're rehearsing it. So when you ask them, "No, I did not." So they come right out with it that way. So,
have you ever come across a pompous prick who actually speak that way? Because there are some who are, pardon me, I speak correctly.
Yeah. But then when you push them a little bit, then that vernacular changes a little bit to a little bit dirtier. And it's hard to keep up with. It's hard to keep that style of vernacular, the higher end up. For a long time. Even though they're smart, they talk that way the whole time. After a while, they'll break down and start using their contractions. Will get a little lighter, and you'll hear more. So, but yeah, I've run across those people plenty.
What is your path getting there? I understand that you learned this to start in a doctor's office with your father.
With my dad. We were little kids, and we lived in a town called Louisa, Kentucky. And Louisa didn't have very many people in it. And my dad was one of just one or two doctors there in Louisa. And he was all the time telling me about what I know now is, and after talking to him about it, bedside manner. When I was 6 or 7, we lived next door to the school in Louisa, Kentucky, my family did. A really small town. And just a few blocks down from where we lived was the hospital, which was just a really big house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the doctor, you go, if you had to go to the doctor, they did surgery there. My dad did everything there. And my mom would take my brother and my sister and I, at lunchtime, we'd walk down the hospital, have lunch with them, and then she'd walk us back to school since we were right next door. And one time we went to, the hospital to have lunch with him, went in his office. And there were people you could see everybody in the place. There were people sitting out there, and two of my friends from the second grade were there. It was Robert Bellamy and Billy Meade. I'll never forget it. And I said to my dad, "Oh, look, there's Robert and Billy." And I said, "I wonder what's wrong with them." My dad looked at him, and he goes, "Well, Robert's got an earache." And I said, "Oh, he does?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "He's got an earache, and his mother was up with him all night long. And so that's what's going on. He's got an earache." And I was like, "Wow, that's cool." And I said, "Well, what about Billy Meade?" And he said, he looked at Billy and said, "Well, see how his mother is, she's, her hair looks the way it should, and she's got her makeup on." And I said, "Yeah." You see how he's sitting on that bench and he's kicking his legs and reading that magazine? He's like highlights or something. And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That tells me that he's not sick." And he said, "In just a minute, his mom's going to pat him on the arm. And that expression that's on his face is going to go away, and he's going to look like he's sad. He's going to look up at his mother, and they'll talk for a minute, and then he'll go back to sitting there again, and he'll start kicking his legs, and his face will go back to the way it is as it is now." And within 2 or 3 minutes, son of a gun, the kid did that. And I thought it was like magic. I was like, "God, tell me more." So he would read me stuff and tell me about what I know now is bedside manner with people. I could tell when you ask somebody if you drinking much, and they were like a hardcore alcoholic, how the little things that he used to tell him was somebody was being honest with him. Because it was important to know if somebody's an alcoholic, you can't give them specific drugs or these types of things. And they may be embarrassed to tell you that they drink, Okay. They may be.
Now, as a kid, were you saying, "Oh, shit, my life is screwed"?
Well, he would do stuff. No, because he would do stuff like this. I remember one time in this old house we lived in, we had a furnace, and it was in the floor. It was under the floor. And one of us had left this little plastic boat on the furnace. And my dad said, "Okay, who did this?" And we're all like, "I don't know. It wasn't me." And there was three of us, my sister, Ellen, my brother, Mitch, and me. And he said, "Well, come over here and stand." And he said, "Let me see your hands." And we like held our hands up, and he goes, "Oh, okay, I know who did it." And then my brother just started crying. So he would do things like that because he knew if we believed that he believed us, then, if he could tell, then we were busted, So,
I didn't know if he was using a punishment question on you or something.
Oh, no. He didn't get that far into it. I mean, for a 9.
You didn't have to, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, I didn't have to. I guess I was going to say I was 9. I wasn't. However old you are in the first and second grades was how old we were when that happened.
6 or 7.
Okay, geez. Yeah, that is little. But he would read me stuff. He would bring home books and show me things from, oh gosh, I can't remember some of those books. The very first book was not Alan Pease. What's the guy's name? The very first.
Peace.
Yeah.
Alan Pease.
Yeah, but the very first book was by, gosh, I can't believe I've got a copy of it. I got one of the first editions of it. I guess I can't remember his name.
First Appeal?
No. This guy was specifically for body language. The first,
body language. Okay. Peace is the first I can think of.
Yeah, he's written some good stuff. First, wait a second, body language book. What's this guy's name? Julius Fast. Dang it, that's right, Julius Fast. Okay. And it was like body language or something. It had some woman on the front, and she looked like she was ready. And but my dad would read me things from different books. I don't know if that was one he read from, but.
So now, did he have an actual interest in it himself versus just bedside manner? I mean, it sounds like he took it beyond just an innate skill. Like he actually saw it as a science and was studying it.
I guess in a way, because he had to do that in that case. And I guess as a doctor, you have to do that a lot. You have to really figure out what somebody's thinking and feeling. Not that they're lying to you or whatever, but so you can help them, help them get better. And I think that's one of the tactics or things that he did was learning how somebody acted and reacted to things.
That brings up a good point when you said, you never know what they're going to tell you and all that. Mm-hmm. I know that you like to talk about, and you had a really cute video about when people ask you, can you turn it off?
Oh, yeah.
And you say, yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
man,
of course,
problem.
You can't. And, I guess Chase is the added star of the show. He keeps coming up. Mm-hmm. One thing he's constantly said is that in the end, you just find out that everybody is kind of sad.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Everybody lies, and you kind of feel bad for them. At first, you feel a little arrogant, like, oh, I know. And then over time, you're just like, they hurt.
Yeah. That's right. That's deep. I don't know. But I agree with that. It's after a while, when you first start doing this, it's like when you first get into psychopathy, you start thinking everybody's a psychopath. You're thinking, geez, dude, I know this guy in the dang second grade. I know that guy was a psychopath, man. The guy sat behind. It's one of those. Everybody you meet or think about when I was 23 or 24, I guess, when I first started getting into it. Everybody I met was a psychopath for like a year and a half. That guy's a psychopath until you learn that's a lot of times you can't even tell. It takes sometimes 6 months to a year to be able to diagnose somebody, and you're really not diagnosing them. You're just making decisions about them yourself. If you really get down to it.
And ironically, it's not even a diagnosable condition technically.
Oh yeah. The DSM it's not even. It used to be, but now it's out. I forget what year. But they call it something else. I don't know what they call it.
Well, it's part of the borderline personality spectrum or something like that. So that's perfect. It leads us down the line because I'm wondering, most people don't just say, oh, I'm a body language expert. I guess, it is sort of a self-declared field.
Yeah.
But you've been at this for a while.
Yeah.
Did you go to school, get a psychology degree? How did you...
Well, there's no school that you can learn. You've got to read everything. And when I started realizing these people I was listening to or seeing weren't correct on a lot of their information, I was like, I got to find this stuff out myself. That's when I started getting into the the research part of it, really jumping in, going deep on that, like way too far. I'm not a doctor. I never could be. But the neurological side of it was the part that fascinated me, because I knew that's what ran. When I give you information, what does your brain do with that information? Was it go, oh man, for example,
like Kahneman stuff, thinking fast and slow and different things?
Yeah. For your limbic system, if I was asking you a question and it shocks you, but you're trying not to look shocked, what's your brain going to do when it gets that information? It's going to think, oh, God, they know he's asking me that, and I have that information. And if you're going to answer that question, 3 things are going to happen. Number 1, your brain's going to go, hang on a minute, man, we can't answer that. We can't answer that question because we're going to get in trouble if we do. And the second thing is going to happen, your brain's going to go, well, what are we going to tell them? So it has to think something up. And then once it thinks up whatever the lie is going to be, it delivers it. And all the action happens in that delivery. Not all the action, but a lot of it, the majority of it happens in that delivery. You can see things as they're being, as they're going through how they're going to answer it or what that question is or what the answer should be. You can see those, and they happen very quickly. If you're familiar with micro expressions and
sure.
You'll see a lot of it there.
That could almost be seen as like a ripple or an echo of an internal effect.
Yeah, and believe me, it's its own study. There's so much that goes into that. You have to get in. Ekman was the first guy. He wasn't the first guy to come up with studying micro expressions or making them or the suggestion of that, but he was the one that popularized it. That's a whole rat hole. I'll jump down there. We'll never get out.
What was your first job? What I'm saying is that how in the world do you find work? Hey, I'm a body language guy.
I hate the term body language expert because it's grouped in with other people who call themselves experts, body language expert, and they're not. It's just
a behavioral engineer. That's what Chafes calls himself.
Yeah, and I think Greg says behavioral analyst or something. But
that'll work.
Yeah, but I don't know. I haven't found a good word for it yet. But when you start this, or like for me, I was in the music business for a long time. So I learned how to pitch acts and pitch bands and pitch ideas for things.
Oh, okay.
And so when we were doing, as we did that, people would say, dude, how did you say that? How did you know this guy was not going to sign our band? Back in the 80s, when all this was going on, there would be, if you had a group that was similar to another group on another label, you might go to that label and say, hey, we want you to sign this group. And they would say, oh yeah, it sounds great. We'll do that. And what they were doing was they would sign your act and just and make a record and all that, but never put it out so it wouldn't compete with what they already had.
Yeah.
So you had to be able to see what those people were doing. And I could do that early on. I was really good at that. And so we and it helped a lot with a lot of decisions we made for signing acts and those types of things. And that was cool and it was fun. And it was great doing it there. But then being able to help somebody if they're in a situation where there's a con, somebody's trying to con them out of something, money, or if it's, if you're a police officer, if you're pulled somebody over, is this thing going to go, is it going to go sideways on you? What's leading up to, if you ever watch Cops and you watch them get somebody out of the car and, I guess the 101 for knowing somebody's going to run is you'll see whoever they've got against the car, they'll be looking right and left, looking for where they're going to run to, and they miss it mostly, a lot of the time.
Or the nostril flare.
Yeah, yeah. And in those cases, they're going to be doing that a lot anyway because they're nervous. They're pulled out of the car. That's going to happen to a lot of them. So you really you take that into consideration. But once they start, they're a little bit stiff and they'll start looking around. That's when they're most of the time going to run. I'm getting down to the rat hole. But for me, when it came to getting into doing depositions and helping with picking juries and those types of things, it was just from attorneys I knew. They'd say, man, how do you know if somebody's going to do this? And I would say, when you ask them this, look for these little things. When that happens, then you ask something else.
Okay, so you pivoted. I'm trying to get the actual job timeline on, how one does this as a career. So you were
how to go about
a manager in music, and then
I was a record producer. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And as I did that, and this was in Boston because I went to Berklee College of Music and had worked there and did a bunch of stuff. But I'd always been in guitar and drums and keyboard, just the same stuff everybody else does, the 3 biggies.
Only multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah, but it sounds like it'd be really cool. But everybody, it's like one of those things where, like in Nashville, you can't sling a dead cat, not hit a banjo player that's a fiddle player, that's a mandolin player, and they're all awesome.
Sure.
It's like they're all like miniature Ricky Skaggs is running around, and that guy can like play anything and everything like really well. So from that, when I moved to Nashville, I was in the music business as well, and moved here because the music business had changed, and I saw it was moving. I saw the country music thing taking off. I saw that getting set up to happen. And this whole time I was still into body language, still studying it, still reading everything I could possibly get my hands on, dealing with lawyers, dealing with cops I knew, helping them make decisions about what they were going to do, where they were headed.
So it was just an obsession and kind of a sideline, like you would just help them because you were into it.
Yeah, I couldn't get enough of it. I didn't know what you do in that case before. And then I'd 2 or 3 friends get together and I'd show them what to do. And then 5 or 6 to get over here and say, I've got to bring my friend. Let's all talk about this. So that's when I really started training people or getting into that part of it. And then, from there, I don't know. It just sort of all meshes together. It's sort of been going on for years. So I never really started, it's been going on since I was 6 or 7. So I don't ever get the feeling I actually began it except for there. But I guess getting actually paid was, I don't know. I can't tell you. I always felt like I've been paid as well. So, but the big thing is getting in with attorneys, getting to know them and be able to do and depositions to find out if the client they're dealing with is lying to them. But there's an odd trend going on with attorneys right now. Like I get hired by 2 or 3 attorneys from the same firm. And they're trying to decide if when somebody in their firm comes in to talk to them, are they trying to get the gig they've already got with that firm? Are they trying to get a case they're working on or one of those types of things? It's really, really interesting how that's working out.
So you've got, you know what? You should start like writing everything down. You probably have screenplays on the works.
Oh, shoot, if I had time to do that, I probably would.
Because it sounds like they're working angles. Like that was a question I actually had for you. Have you ever gone into a corporation or something to investigate, let's say a quote unquote embezzler, and the person hired you is probably the one who did it?
Oh yeah. That's one of the things you look for, because like if you get hired by a bank and you go in, they're going to have the board will be sitting there. And what you've got to decide once you first go in there, for what I have to decide anyway, is as I'm talking to these people, I've got to decide whether one of these people, that's the first thing you've got to decide is one of the people in here have hired me. Are they the one that did it? Are they in cahoots with the one who did it? And they're going to be feeding that person information. And a lot of times you can tell by what's going on in their face, what kind of inner dialogue they've got going on. You've always got the guy who smiles the whole time. And that's the guy that's thinking in his brain, did I check my email? I bet that's so-and-so buzzing in my pocket. Oh God, I got to call him back. And then you got another guy that's going, oh, tonight's going to be great. We can go out to eat. We've been married 10 years. And then I can always tell who's the main money guy, because he looks at me with a fairly blank face and he's thinking, I Googled this guy and look at that haircut and that big nose. This better be good. This is expensive and he better be able to. There's that look. Worth it. Oh yeah.
And he's your best friend afterward, right?
Oh yeah. And they always love it. And then you've got the guy that's just bored and it just could not possibly care less. And he's trying to, he's sitting there jiggling his leg, looking back, looking around and stuff. Then you'll have somebody who will not take their eyes off you. They're watching you the whole time, listen to everything you say. And you can see in their face, they're going, oh no, this isn't good. This is, I bet I Googled this guy. This is not good at all. I'll bet maybe he already knows it's me. Maybe they all know me. That's what this is. Maybe this is an intervention. Maybe that's what's happening. And you can see that guy. So then they'll usually have a group of people. Let's think, well, we want one of these 3 or 4 people. And then I'll have to say, well, let me talk to you all separately as well, so I can get an idea of what you think about these things. And then I'll have to talk to them. It takes longer because you don't want to say, I just want to talk to that guy or I just want to talk to that woman. That's my tactic anyway. So other people may have other ways to approach it, but that's my approach.
Those must take longer, but they have to be kind of more satisfying.
They are. And a lot of times they'll happen on the weekend. If you have somebody that's there on the weekend, they're missing hanging out with their family. They're missing time off from work. So when you call them in on Sunday or you call them in on Saturday, they're already going to be on edge a little bit. And so if you're trying to get them to tell you about someone else in there, if you say, who else could have possibly have done this? And they'll say, I know who could have done it.
It was Bill. Can I go now?
No, see, I don't want to tell anybody. What do you think? What do you think? I would check into Philip, because they're going to be mad at Philip for making them be there. Or Gladys or whoever it is. There are a million things, a million little approaches you can take and look at in those situations. I like to make the decisions about whether the person in there that I'm meeting with that's hiring me is the person who's actually done it. And it's not very often that happens, but it does happen.
Now, for people who want to do this, or just even experiment with it in their own life, because it could just be a factor whether they get promoted over somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
Not necessarily they're going to do it as a living, but they could be in the conference room and go, "Oh, am I going to get shit canned on this project, or am I going to?" So it's all relevant. What would you say is the best first approach? Just to sit and observe?
I would say start reading. There's so many good books out there, depending on if you're thinking, I want to be a body language expert. There are a lot of good books, and you have to really be careful about the ones you read, because you'll get a lot of bad information, and you'll take that from that moment on. Usually one of the first people you start reading and you start getting into, that's you patting yourself after them. This is what Joe Navarro would do. This is what Greg Hartley would do, This is what Mark Bowden would do, those types of things. So you really have to be careful about the information you get. The ones that I know for sure and can vouch for and feel great about and not send you down a rat hole, Joe Navarro. He's got one called
What Everybody
is Saying. That's such a great book. And then Greg Hartley's got, I Can Read You Like a Book, How to Spot a Liar. You've got several of his that are the Most Dangerous Business book you'll ever read, which is a fantastic book. That's one to check out. I don't think it got the props it should have gotten when it came out, but man, that's one of my favorite books of all time. Mark Bowden's books are great. You have to be really careful about what you get, because you'll get this bad information and you run into somebody like me who will. I usually don't call somebody on it, unless they're telling me what they think because of this, and it's like, geez, man, here's why you're wrong. But you'll run into books that's full of bad information, or a person who's full of bad information. So to get into it, start reading, but read the valid info. Start with Greg Hartley. Start with I Can Read You Like a Book. Great book. It's simple. It's easy, but it's got a lot. There's a lot in there. And then Joe Navarro is great too. That What Everybody Is Saying is a fantastic book.
And I'll throw in Chase Hughes' ellipsis behavior.
I've got to read that. See, I haven't read that. And
okay, I know. I'm gonna throw it in. He quotes Navarro and Everybody, so it's kind of a safe one, because he's sort of done something highly.
Oh yeah, Joe's like the James Brown. He's the guy that's been in it and been around for a long time. And
you have a book coming, don't you?
Yeah, Greg and I are writing one now, actually, and we don't know what we're going to name it, but he's coming back and forth from Nashville. I'm going back and forth from Atlanta. We're writing it. So,
are you basing it on the course that you guys teach?
No, we're trying to do a book nobody's done before, and it's about not telling the truth, and it's about deception. But it's not like how to spot a liar and all those types of things. As we lay it out, we keep going from it's going to be what style of book it's going to be. So really haven't figured out how we're going to put all the information in it. Is it going to be more of a cookbook situation? Is it going to be more of just an instructional situation? Is it what type it's going to be? But it's going to be online, but not from an angle that everybody's used to. It's going to be a little bit different.
You could actually do two books then, if you're confused on it. One with the text and the other like a workbok.
That's true too. Yeah.
I don't know if that would work for you, but it's just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got to make one as we do it, we're trying to write it so it's like the kind I like to read are not, on one hand, I like the really hardcore research type things with all the information and all the
encyclopedias.
I just love that. But on the other hand, the stuff that I started on wasn't that type of books. You have to get somebody reading, you have to keep them reading, you have to be interested in it, and it has to be interesting. So that's, you ride that line. Because I'm always into giving as much valid, in-depth information as you can, but nobody wants all that stuff. Some people do, but that's
it could be overwhelming to start, though, right?
Oh yeah. So you don't want that. That's where Greg and Joe's books. I mean, you read those and go, "Geez, man, this sounds so simple. I'm going to be an expert," And then when you read through them, you try to remember it all, and you go in the kitchen and you talk to your mom or your wife or one of your friends, and you always lied about so and so, and you realize maybe they're not. But you might score once or twice and go, you're lying about that. And then that'll make you feel good that you found one. But after that, I mean, it can end relationships if you do it wrong.
You've talked about that, though, that a good way to practice is, I think you said in the grocery store, and just kind of being playful.
Nothing
serious, but just kind of like
grocery stores. Yeah.
You don't need all that nutrition. You're not into that, or whatever. Just playing with people and
yeah. One of my favorite things to do is say, "Where do I know you from? I know you from so and so," and start asking them questions about, and I get to see them looking for these, in their head. Do I know so and so? Do I know you from wherever it is? And they'll have a sticker or something on their bag, and they'll say, "I'm from I'm into the whatever," or like something hospital, so I know they work at a hospital, or that type of thing. And so I'll start talking about doctors who don't exist, and they go, "Oh yeah, I know Dr. So-and-so." And, "Oh, okay, man, that's where it's from." Yeah, okay, sorry. But
so is that a way you can test almost, because the visualization of whether they're actually trying to remember or they're actually trying to create? Or is there any truth to that?
One of the things I like to do is when I go to a restaurant and I go, "Tell me about I remember one time we went into this one place and they had tongue. And I said, "Tell me about his tongue sandwich. Is that pretty good?" And "Oh, yeah, it's really good." And I said, "Dude, you've never had one of those in your life, have you?" And then that pause when they stop, because they haven't, I don't know who eats that stuff, but the waiters who say, "Oh, it's wonderful." I said, "Well, tell me, when was the last time you had one?" And you can see them searching for this information that they do not have. They're trying to say, "Oh, yeah, yesterday." I was going, "You didn't have that yesterday, man. Don't tell me that." And they go, "Well, it's really not that good. I didn't, I wouldn't get it." So
it's popular. People like it.
So it's
my thing.
Yeah. So it's just testing, once you start doing it, because if not, you're just sitting there at the house looking around going, "Geez," and you start watching the news, trying to decide who's lying, and they're all lying on the news. Looking at the politics. But going out and getting the out in the wild and getting feedback and seeing what's working and what's not, it's like you have to do people you don't know, I guess. But I still do it. I got in the habit of that when I was in junior high, and I just never stopped it. That's one of the things I like to do.
Well, it's probably good just to practice for your work and everything else, especially if you're constantly approaching strangers. I'm sure it helps you personality-wise, because you're a bit of an introvert, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I do talk a lot, but that's only when we start talking about this kind of stuff that I can't shut up.
Or you're playing a role.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you're in an interrogation, you've got to be, and you can, if you're dealing with an alpha, and you have to act like an alpha, if that's the case, if that's need to be in the case, then you have to be able to act that way. And if you're dealing with an introvert, then you have to, act like an introvert so you can get along with them. That whole Erickson thing, you got to be able to
mirroring.
Yeah, matching and mirroring. So you've got to, I try to do that personality wise as well. In some cases, it doesn't always take that, but that's one tactic. Everybody has different ways of approaching it. Everybody has different tactics. As you go through, for example, like when we talked about the read technique before, I like seeing that technique. It's kind of like an old car, and you get an old car and you put your favorite stuff. You put your favorite kind of wheels on there. You paint flames on the side if you want to. You put wherever, special spark plugs or whatever in them, or the little, the gear shifter. So you can dress it up and be the kind of car you want, but it's still the same car. And so in the read technique, when it comes to stories and personalities and things, as you talk to this person, you create stories.
What does read stand for, by the way?
That's the guy's name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. REID. That was the guy who came up as a cop in, I believe, in Chicago. So that's the way I approach that, because you have different stories you tell this person. For example, if I'm talking to you about robbing something, or you've robbed something, and I've looked at your background, and I know for sure that you just got married and you just bought a car, and you haven't been in this house you've been in very long. You just moved out from your parents' house, and you just got, since you just got married, you got to have your own pad. And as we're talking, I use an example, and I always use my old roommate, Andrew Connor, from when I was in Boston. And I say, I had a roommate that made a mistake similar to what you did. And then I make his mistake exactly what theirs was, just a little bit differently than what they've got. So my story in that is a little bit different for that person. It's the same story, but it fits that whatever that person did. That's how, in other words, I get in and sort of morph into that other person closely. I've got an experience similar to yours, the one you're sitting in, so, and he got away with what he did. And sometimes I wonder what would happen if he didn't get away, or what would happen if he'd gotten caught, where would he be today? I'd ask him things like that. Shoot, now I'm off on this tangent. I can't remember what your question was, how we got to that spot. Right. Holy smokes.
Well, it's funny. You brought up a cookbook earlier, things like that. And I couldn't help but thinking, listening to you and others in researching that this technique is like cooking versus baking.
Yeah.
Because there's an old thing that cooking is an art and baking is a science.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And when you have like one of the great example I like to keep going back to is, as far as the cookbook, as we put this thing together, is you've got 5 or 6 ingredients that you use for, 100 different things. You've got sugar, flour, butter, and what else goes into a cake, and eggs. And then the same thing goes into cookies, but just how different you make them. And the same thing will go into pies. You just make them differently. You just add the ingredients, the same ingredients, you just add different amounts of them to make cookies or to make a cake or to make cornbread or to make this or to make that. So that's the way a lot of times I like to look at it, as more of a recipe. When you're going in to interrogate someone, you say, oh, okay, I see now. I've got to lay back on my being aggressive and go heavy on something's wrong with me, or I'm not as smart as you are, or I've got to go heavy on I'm smarter than you, or I'm just as narcissistic as you, or, So it just depends on the ingredients you add together to make that person. You can do your approach to that person to get information you need from them. Same kind of thing goes into lying. But that's what we're talking about, making them forming this stuff together for on that book.
Well, perfect. And until that point, people can catch you on videos on your site, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I've started doing 1 or 2 videos a week now. Depending on if somebody gets in trouble, that's when I start firing off 4 or 5 at a time. As
Smollett.
Oh yeah, as the information comes in, I'll just squat them out real quick. Yeah, and we don't have to talk about that guy, but man. You look at that and you go, this guy's lying his hand in. Everybody knows it. You can take anybody.
Dig a little deeper, though. Can you do one on Kim Fox?
Yeah.
The prosecutor who was making the deals. No, I'm sometimes the ancillary players are fascinating to do. Like, Rahm Emanuel. Is he genuinely pissed?
I think his ego is a little bit bruised in that situation. I understand why you would ask that, but he looks mad to me because he's standing there. He's got the relationships with that police department and all that. I think he's a little bit angry. I think he's butting heads with whoever made that call. That's just what I think. I mean, what do I think?
I think he's being legit when he said this is a whitewash and a travesty. And
yeah.
And I think he's taking it personally. Because he made the comment about he, as a Jew, had put a Nazi flag on his lawn and did all. So I that's where I was like, okay, yeah, this is personal. He was very, very angry.
Oh, he was PO'd. So I think that it looks to me like it's real from that position.
Well, that's
anyway.
Cool. And you have a course on there that you're doing with Greg as well.
Oh yeah, body language tactics, and that's
what is that all about?
That sort of takes you from. You can actually, when you're finished with that, you'll know so much more about body language than just reading a book. We do it on there. We have they're short little lessons. They're some are 3 minutes, some go to 12 minutes, but they're 3, 5, 7 minutes long. And it takes you from the very basics of body language, of what you're seeing, how to observe, to the intricacies of what you're looking for in an interrogation. And it takes a while to go through. It's like a month's worth of stuff. But we give it to you in pieces, a little bit every day in the week. So when you go through, you go, oh, okay, I get it. So you get the video, and you watch the video, and then you get audio. But the audio is Greg talking about. If I do the video, then Greg will do the audio of the same thing, but he words it differently, and he'll explain the same thing but differently. So you get the visual part of it, and you get to go through the video, then you get the audio part of it, and then you get stuff written down. You can go through and check things off and look at them and say, oh, I get that, and download a bunch of stuff, and a bunch of PDFs and audio as well. So you can take it with you. And it's going really well. I mean, it sort of shocked both of us about how well it did. If you got listeners that want to take it, it's a little expensive, but if you want to, I'll come up with a code. If you can think of a code, I'll put on it, and they can get in for.
How about unstructured?
Okay, let me write this down. So I'll say it's like $1,250, $1,250. What if we put them in for like $99 instead of like $1,250? If they want to do it, I'll put it in for $9. Let me write that down too. Hopefully Greg won't kill me for that. So we'll see if they
for want that to much. I'm going to pay for it.
Yeah. But, so if they want to do it, just go to bodylanguagetactics.com, bodylanguagetactics.com. And when you go into pay, there'll be a little thing that for you to put in the little code, and that'll be the code unstructured. So yeah, it'll be $99. I'll get on that as soon as we get off of this.
Well, that's fantastic. And talking about a value add.
Yeah.
Get the course, then you can buy the books.
Yeah, that's true. I get that. And the money is saving. But it's really interesting. It's really, all of our feedback's been really good. But it's really interesting the way it's done. And the setup goes from the very basics, from the very beginning of how you start observing someone, what you're looking for, why you're looking for it, those types of things. Then we start going through specifics of what to look for and then showing examples of those things.
Fantastic. Definitely check it out. And everybody needs to check out your site and all your social media links out of your site as well.
Okay. Yeah. Just scottrouse.com. You can get to all of them from there.
And Scott, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Oh, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it. This has been great. And I really enjoyed the pre-talking stuff we did as well. That was fun too.
Wasn't Scott amazing? He drops knowledge like crazy. And how about that course? Seriously, I was a bit shocked when he offered such a good deal. Once again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so and tell a friend. And in the spirit of sharing, here's a couple other podcasts you might want to check out.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, the host of It's No Secret with Dr. T, which is a small business and marketing podcast. Each week, I interview business leaders who openly share the secrets to their massive success. It's No Secret with Dr. T will educate, entertain, and inspire you. Check it out. You'll find it wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can go to my website, tysonfranklin.com.
I did not grow up with very much money.
Money's energy.
Money is something that really scares me. You had about 60 grand in debt.
Money isn't the answer.
Somebody should just give me a lot of money.
My dream was to be the WWE wrestler, but you realize that your dreams change over the years.
Money is a tool. It's a key to a gate. And at the other side of the gate is the things that you really want to do with your life. It's the things that matter most to you. It's pursuing those values that make you ultimately happy.
Listen to Inspired Money at inspiredmoney.fm.